Hello everybody, this is Wheel Trouble and welcome back to Let's Play Obduction. When we had left off, we had just gotten into Farley's house and unlocked the door, and we had just started to get a cursory overview of how the seed swap machines worked. This episode, we're going to go ahead and explore a little bit more, picking up these books and seeing where we can go from there. Without further ado, Chapter 3. Welcome to Hunrath. Please give us a bit of information about you so we can get to know you a little better. Name. Date you came from. Please use 4-digit year. Where you came from, country and city. Circumstance under which you were taken. Please note any dangers you noticed. Emptied and filed. 12,000 AH, 13,000 AH, 15,000 AH. Samuel Karen. January 2017. Manakara, Madagascar. I had just arrived and was driving my supply truck along the coast south of Manakara when I recall being washed away and the seed appeared. 15,257 AH, male, age 61. Uziel, and I'm not even going for that last name. 1942, March, Lübeck, Germany. The last thing I recall is a large rumbling while I was hiding in the cellar of a vacant building. I ran toward a bright light in a stairwell. 15,841 AH, male, age 26. Maria Gallego. September 1988, Cozumel, Mexico. On my boat and a bad storm. 16,023 AH, female, age 46. Can't really read that first name, and the last name's a little bit out of my field as well. March of 2042, Portland, United States of America. Skiing at Mount Hood. 16,717 AH, male, 37. I shall document the curious events that have transpired with myself, my family, friends, and co-workers. Hartnell was a peaceful mining town founded by my grandfather and nestled within the red rock of the desert in the Arizona Territory. Its 163 inhabitants heard a mighty explosion on the night of June 27, 1903. I sent several workers through the town to verify that the explosion had not caused any injuries or damage to mining equipment. They returned and reported that it must have been a loud clap of thunder caused by dry lightning, for they had found no damage. It was not until the light of the next morning that we were amazed to realize something profound had indeed occurred. At some point during that night, our entire mining facility and a large circle of the land around it seemed to have been scooped up and carried off to a completely different place, all without anyone knowing about it. The entire landscape outside of our circle of desert could only be described as alien. Large floating rocks could be seen in the distance. No one had ever seen anything like it, anywhere on Earth. We fully explored our new surroundings, hoping to find a way home. No way home was ever found. In fact, we soon discovered what we take for granted now. Not only could we not get back home, we also could not access the landscape outside the desert. Curiously, we discovered that a flow of water was provided from a high point of rock, and we discovered a small tree growing in the very center of the circle. Our central tree that is so important to our lives here was just a mere sapling back then. Species description: Mofang. Through ambassador seeds, the Mofang were the first non-human species humans were introduced to. An Liang was the first to call the alien a Mofang, impressed with their advanced ability to imitate our sounds, movements, and mannerisms. Although they have a name for themselves, their language is mostly unpronounceable by humans. As a result, and because of their mimicry abilities, communication with the Mofang is primarily accomplished by learning human languages, rather than humans learning to speak Mofang. They have been able to learn almost every human language represented in Hunrath, enough to provide functional, if rudimentary, communication. The Mofang basic external morphology is remarkably humanoid: bilateral symmetrical tetrapods, bipedal, head with anterior facial features, mouth, eyes, nostrils. Other external features include minimal body hair and raised dorsal protrusions. Constitution is somewhat frail, due apparently to their thin and lightweight internal structure, but internal investigation has not been possible. They have ample cranial space to account for a substantial brain, and their intelligence is impressive, as evidenced by their advanced technology. Alright, and here we can see a Mofang. I'll go ahead and leave this up so you guys can kind of soak in the view a little bit, and I'll leave the pictures up a little bit as well for each of the species so that you can kind of get a quick overview. I won't speak too much on them. There's not much to say, really. Arai. After a certain level of maturity and health of the tree, a passage opened at its base. This passage allowed contact with 2 additional species. The first contact was with the Arai. The first contact revealed the Arai to be a large beetle-like insect. We were unable to communicate directly with them in any way, but they appeared to have some rudimentary level of intelligence. It was Lorink Toth who first made the journey through the heart to Kaptar, and named both the New World and the inhabitants. The Arai have 3 distinct variants that have come to be referred to as barnacle, beetle, and polyarch. Although their morphology is dramatically different from human, their internal systems, like all of our neighbors, are supported by a similar atmospheric composition and basic nutrients. In their barnacle stage, the Arai are completely immobile. The Arai stay in this egg-like development state seemingly indefinitely. In order to hatch, they must be in proximity of a polyarch and fertilized by the beetles after a certain stage of maturity. The beetles are the eyes and ears, hands and feet. With only a minimal nervous system of their own, they are essentially the sensory extensions of the immobile polyarchs. They are able to execute simple commands, but apparently have very little in the way of individual sentience. The Arai polyarchs are the intelligence and consciousness of the species. Although it was obvious that there was intelligence behind the species, it wasn't until Carolyn Farley began spending large amounts of time in close proximity that a deeper communication began. With a room nearby, Farley was able to communicate non-verbally and learn much about the species, including some historical information. The Arai species survived in their own world, while several other sentient species came and went. Among them, an ancient species who formed a deeper relationship with the Arai, carving temples and dwellings for them in the rocks, and later, a more recent species that took over much of their homeworld. This latter species was especially adept at mechanical construction, using it mostly to capture and process large flying creatures, using the beetles as bait. Villian. The final species to be discovered were the Villian. The Villian had been communicating with the Arai for many years through ambassador seeds, but became part of the larger community very shortly after the Arai. With a large and imposing frame, and a form of communication based on complex, multi-voiced, low-frequency rumble, the initial introductions were intimidating. After several attempts, Emily Vidal was able to begin some rudimentary communication and began visiting the Villian in Marais, which she named, on a regular basis. She discovered a complex and amazing society that was able to use their technology in unexpected ways. They had the ability to quickly transform their world, using extruded structures based on some form of complex miniature substrate material. Unlike the other worlds, the Villian sphere is scooped out of a Villian resettlement group that was preparing to set off into space to find a new homeworld. This was their way of life, to put themselves into stasis and scatter themselves through the stars. As mentioned previously, their appearance is imposing, standing about 9 feet tall, with a distinct reptilian resemblance. They have 6 limbs, 2 muscular legs and arms, and a smaller set of arms. They control every aspect of their technology with their vocalizations, but over the years, they have created control panels based on their number system that allows other species to easier access elements of their technology. Communication. Talking with our neighbors. We take communication for granted, even with the varied languages we find here in Hunrath. But when we suddenly find ourselves among other intelligent species who don't share our culture, history, DNA, or vocal cords, it requires a huge amount of effort for the beginning of rudimentary chatting. This quick overview will set the stage for what to expect when communicating with our neighbors. Mofang. The Mofang were the first non-humans we met. With at least some level of similar physical vocal generating abilities, they picked up human words quickly. This early mimicry resulted in what the species became to be called. Even though they were able to mimic single words and simple phrases, it became evident over the years that huge grammatical differences were not easily overcome. Some have proposed that the difficulty may have arisen because the Mofang insisted on attempting to learn every human language, and as a result were never able to lock on to any consistent grammatical structure. Nevertheless, in spite of the rudimentary sentence construction, it has been very easy to communicate, and it has been unnecessary for us to learn their language beyond a few simple phrases and proper names. If you'd like to learn more about communicating with the Mofang, please contact Tam. Villian. The Villian have presented a particular communication challenge. From what we can gather, they produce sounds using 2 large reed-like structures inside opposite sides of their heads. The vibrations generated are channeled to resonance chambers in their skulls, where they are combined into a complex, low-frequency dual tone. The low-frequency bitonal sounds are not only hard for humans to hear and resolve, but impossible for us to mimic. The Villian's hearing is also oriented towards low frequency, so they are unable to hear most of the sounds associated with human speech. Therefore, communication with the Villian has relied on technology. They have adapted consoles, which the Villian fluently control with vocalization, for use by other species. Over the years, some individuals of other species, including a few humans, have learned to communicate very effectively using this method. Humans have been able to pick out some higher frequency characteristics of certain key Villian words over the years, and although we can't speak them in any way that the Villians can understand, we are occasionally able to hear and recognize these words when spoken distinctly by the Villian. If you'd like to learn more about communication with the Villian, please contact Vito. Arai. None of the stages of the Arai morphology have any vocalization apparatus. Because of the obvious synchronization of the barnacle flash and the ability of the pawns to provide for and address the needs of the polyarchs, it was assumed that the species could communicate effectively. It was not until Farley began to spend large amounts of time in the polyarch antechamber that the first clues to this communication became evident. After months of research, Farley began to have limited success with receiving some kind of simple messages that were coming from the polyarchs. It is apparent now that the polyarchs had been attempting to communicate the entire time, but they themselves had been experimenting with various channels until they got a response from Farley. After this breakthrough, others were able to tune in to the polyarchs and learn to listen. Both the polyarchs and the pawns have a simple organ that can sense human vocal frequency, enabling them to sense simple responses from humans. But over the years, Farley was able to learn to speak to the polyarchs via a related form of extrasensory transmission. If you'd like to learn more about communication with the Arai, please contact Farley. Ambassador seeds. Ambassador seeds were first documented about 150 Earth years ago. They occur about once every 400 days if the trees remain healthy. Natural seed swaps occur between pairs of seeds that we now know dropped simultaneously from healthy trees in paired sphere. When each seed was touched by a species in sphere, the swap occurred, sending an ambassador from each sphere to the paired sphere. Location of the swap is defined by the locations of the pairs of seeds. After the first swap, the seeds recharged quickly, allowing for a quick return. First meetings were intense, but naturally short. It was quite a surprise for both the Mofang and us. Over time, the seeds required more time to recharge, producing longer visits between species. Collector seeds. Everyone who arrives is familiar with the collector seeds. The bright light that we were all drawn to right before the event that brought us here, is a collector seed. What new arrivers may not be aware of is that these seeds, like all seeds, come in pairs. When the tree drops a collector seed on the ground, it signals that its twin has begun a quest for a new being. That search may take hours, or it may take years. When an appropriate situation, unnatural threat of death, is found, the seed activates and swaps a smaller but varying sized sphere from Earth, or whatever appropriate homeworld, here to Hunrath. As Hunrath became more populated, we would watch for a newly dropped collector seed, collect it, and place it in the entry canyon area. This allowed us to provide a more predictable entry experience for new arrivers, and provide a single area to collect any resources that may come along with the new arriver. Unlike ambassador seeds and mother seeds, collector seeds do not seem to survive. The inner core is spent, leaving only the lifeless outer husk. Mother seeds, postulated but unverified, first suggested by Alama Hamsa 2232BH. The notion of mother seeds extrapolates the behavior of the lesser seeds to a superseed. She posited that the process that actually created the paired spheres was similar to all other swaps, but on a much grander scale. The idea is that two seeds from a mother tree were scattered on the galactic winds to find appropriately similar environments. When matches were found, some process was triggered that swapped large portions of landscape between vastly different worlds. Alama further noted that the trees' locations in the center of the spheres suggested that the trees grew from the mother seed. Because of the similarities, it has been conjectured that reswapping the entire environmental sphere might be possible with a large-scale version of the ambassador seed machine. Alright, let's go see if we can make some use out of that number 15. I'm going to bet that CW thinks he can take the mother seed concept and actually apply it. Perhaps that's what he's meaning when he says he can get us home. Only one way to find out, though. Time to draw that nice little nifty 15. Good grief, this is frustrating. Oh well, practice makes perfect, right? Okay, so we need to remember the number 406. So one of these locks is going to take 3 digits. Hopefully it's just the next one we come in contact with. Kinda curious on CW's plan. Something about it's not sitting right. Seems ambitious to me. Now we're going to make some use of that map, and we're going to bounce from wall to wall for a little bit. And we can't really cross there, can we? Alright, we're going to have to fix that a little later, I'm guessing. There's something just comical about charging into a wall as fast as possible and hoping that it's not solid at the other side. It's interesting how they used that to gather power for this area. Really is cool. And the view from up here is just stellar. It's a good thing they got a bunch of miners. I can't imagine a bunch of city folk doing very well here. What do you know? This takes 3 digits, so let's go with 406. And we're in. (17,125 AH). Special Council Session 2. Discussed final approval of Farley's plan with regard to the imminent attack. The full council vote was unanimous, and I gave my final approval. Preparations update. Farley says that the tunneling is almost complete. Tham informs us that the Villians have just completed their construction and have started testing. 17,126 AH. Special Council Session 12. Oh, so that was 11. No one attended. I will inquire as to reason for their absence. 17,127 AH. It appears that the council members feel like we're having too many meetings. Since the plan has been approved, perhaps we can reduce our meetings to every 2 days for now. While I was asking Cecil about his absence, I also inquired about securing the tower area. 17,128 AH. Special Council Session 13. Cecil will provide a new key code for the lower lock in the next few days. Cecil was concerned about any survivors not having access, so it was decided that we would conceal the code in Farley's house and give the residents the location as they were being chambered. I also had him change the upper tower access code. A clue to that code has been placed under the direction of our first mayor. 17,129 AH. I have decided to bring some of the more important mayor's logs with me for chambering, specifically the internal Hunrath log, and then the logs that document the history of our conflict with the Mofang. I would think that we would have an extra chamber available for historical documents. 17,130 AH. Special Council Session 14. Only Tham attended. He informed me that, because of the dire circumstances, the others were either extremely busy or not inclined to have long discussions about the situation. I told him I would suspend the regular special council sessions and would simply meet as the need arose. 17,131 AH. I paid a visit to Farley today. I asked her to check on the availability of a chamber for the documents. 17,135 AH. I've spent the last few days collecting documents. I've divided them into two categories, chambered and vaulted. The vaulted are less important, but obviously worth making an effort to save. They can be moved into Farley's vault area. The vaulted category will also include any books that we've managed to collect through the years. 17,137 AH. With less than a week remaining before chambering begins, the population is tense. We've had several town hall meetings to try and answer any questions, but the realities of the current situation make it difficult to assuage fears. 17,138 AH. Farley has informed me that there is one final confirmation from Shavar. If Farley doesn't hear from her by the end of 17,141 AH, then there is no turning back. There is an odd justice to Farley's plan that in whatever the Mofang bastards send to kill us will be returned back to them. 17,140 AH. Special Council Session 15. A special meeting was called to go over the plans for the final time. Farley had several instruction sheets to distribute, the Mofang weapon illustration, a list of all souls that will be used as a basis for the chambering manifest, and a thorough summary of the battle plans. These will be distributed as necessary. No word from Shavar. (17,141 AH). Farley tells me that there will be at least one chamber available for historic documents. Any other extra chambers will be loaded with emergency provisions and medications in case either Hunrath or Murray are completely destroyed. No word from Shavar. 17,142 AH. No word from Shavar. Death is on our doorstep. Curse the Mofang devils to hell. 17,143 AH. I am leaving to be chambered. This journal will remain here to inform any future souls of what our last days were like. It seems like everybody abandoned ship rather quickly. I'm kind of curious as to what kind of weapon it was that could be sent straight back through the seed that the Mofang were sending through. We'll have to keep a mental note of that. And that's going to conclude Chapter 3. We'll see you in Chapter 4. And if there's anything you want to talk about, ask, just leave me a comment, and we'll go ahead and address that possibly in the next video if I don't quickly address it in the comment. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.